Okay, I'm back. Sorry for the technical issues. I guess these things happen sometimes. Doesn't make it any easier or any more fun, but these things happen sometimes. So, anyway, I don't know what happened, but I'm back now to start trying to explain one more time about the purpose of yoga. So, let me go ahead and dive into it. Hopefully, some of the folks who were with me when my internet froze a minute ago will find me over here on this live stream. All right. This is why I have to tell you guys. I'm just going to pause here and explain for a minute. This is why one of many reasons that I'm so grateful for yoga, because a long time ago, before I practiced yoga, something like this situation, like starting a live stream and then having a technical problem and it crashes, like this would have totally derailed me. Many years ago, before I practiced yoga, I would have panicked and probably started crying and been so upset and blaming myself and kicking myself figuratively, um, for hours or days if something like this had happened. And now, between yoga and just the wisdom of age, you know these things happen, and it's not so upsetting to me anymore, because I don't know, for whatever reason, I think that I realize now that people are understanding, that people realize technical issues happen. um, you know People understand this happens to everybody. And so, when something like this happens, for me, I'm telling myself, good, don't get too upset about it. But for you too, when something difficult like this happens, something unexpected that's outside of your control, you know we can't do anything about it. It's outside of our control. So give yourself some grace. Just do your best to see what you can do to minimize disruption and just move on with your life. So anyway, here we are, and I see a couple of people have found me now on this new live stream. So welcome back, or welcome if you weren't on the other one that crashed. And now I'll get back into this topic. So what I'll end up doing is deleting that first video, that first live stream that didn't quite work out. And so I'm gonna just start over, and I hadn't explained a whole lot, so I'll go ahead and start again so that we have everything in one place. Today I'm talking about the purpose of yoga. And many people think that the main purpose of yoga is to become more flexible. And of course, people have the idea that in order to become more flexible, you have to do painful stretches, and that yoga is like really difficult for people to do. But in fact, that's not true. And also, in fact, that's not the main point of yoga. Another main purpose that people think yoga serves is to help you become stronger. And yes, while you will become stronger, that still is not the main point of yoga. So there's a very important text in yoga philosophy called the Yoga Sutras. And the Yoga Sutras, I have a couple of copies here with me. This one is my main Yoga Sutras book. You can see it's kind of a thick one, and it includes all of the Yoga Sutras and explanations about each of the sutras. Let me tell you a little bit about this book first, and then I'm going to tell you about my other book. So this one is my second Yoga Sutras book that I started to use when I began to study in India in, I think it was 2017. Before that, I had a different Yoga Sutras book that was a lot shorter and simpler and more straightforward, which was needed because when I first got started with this, even still, the content is very dense and challenging to understand. And so it's good to start out with kind of an easier version of the book that's a little bit simplified, and then you can start to get into a more, in-depth version like this one. So Yoga Sutras, yoga, you know what yoga is. Sutra means thread. And this one says the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Patanjali is the person or persons who compiled all of the knowledge and wisdom in this book. And sutra, this word is a Sanskrit word that means thread, like, the thing that you sew with, the thread that, sews the clothes. And what a sutra book is, or what a sutra is, it's a short piece of information. So it's kind of like a dense, short sentence or sentence fragment sometimes that gives you some information, but it's very dense, and there's a lot of backstory to each of the sutras. So a person cannot just pick up the Yoga Sutras book and read it and expect to understand everything. we need a teacher. We need someone to give us some context and some backstory so that we can, begin to better understand each of the sutras and then how they all weave together and, and it's like that. So anyway, that's what sutra is. And the Yoga Sutras book contains a ton of information, a lot of philosophy, some information about asana. Um, in fact, I don't know, I'm going to kind of like geek out on you and I'm going to try not to go in too many directions, but there are only like very limited, I want to say like 3 or 4 references to asana in this whole book. Asana, is the physical yoga postures. Rather, this focuses a lot on, the whole of yoga, the whole depth and breadth of yoga, of which asana, the physical practice, is actually a very small part. So I'll get into more of that as we get into it. The other book that I have here with me today is my chanting book. And so this book is a little bit different because it just contains the sutras themselves. And I'm just opening to the first page. So here, hopefully you're seeing this in the correct way and not like a mirror image. But here we have, this is Yoga Sutra, chapter 1, verse 1. There's 4 chapters, by the way, in here. This chapter is called Samadhi Pada. Samadhi is like focus and meditation. And so this chapter is teaching us what we need to know about being able to focus and meditate. Anyway, on this side we have, the English alphabet letters so that we know how to pronounce things. But on this side it's written in Sanskrit. I don't read Sanskrit, so I learn my chanting from this side. And so the Yoga Sutra, chapter 1, verse 2, right here, teaches us what is the purpose of yoga. It says, yoga, chitta vritti nirodha. That's how you say that. Yoga, you know what that is. Chitta is mind. Vritti means fluctuation. Nirodha means, hold on a second. Chitta vritti, yoga, chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the practice of stopping the fluctuations of the mind. So what that, how I told you, you need a teacher to explain it to you. So what that really means is that the purpose of yoga is to stop the fluctuations of the mind, or we can say it in a different way. The purpose of yoga is to calm the mind, quiet the mind, be in control of the mind so that it's not fluctuating. Fluctuating means thinking about different things, getting distracted by different things. So yoga is the practice of being able to have a calm and quiet and focused mind. That's what I'm going to be talking about today, the purpose of yoga. So you might be thinking, well, how is that? Because, yoga, at least in this country, is known as exercise. It's like things that you do with your body and you become stronger and more flexible. Yes, that is absolutely true. And we can say that in yoga, we use the body as a tool to help calm and focus the mind. So let me see where I go from here. You probably have heard me, maybe you've heard me talk about the 8 limbs of yoga before. The first 2 are having to do with like philosophy topics and how we should behave, how we should conduct ourselves. Yama, niyama, asana. So the third one is asana, the physical postures, the physical practice that you're familiar with. After that, we have pranayama, breathing. Then we have dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And these 3 together are the steps for learning to meditate. So where was I? So we learn first about, the physical postures. We start learning about the body. And the reason I say that, that we use the body as a tool to, to teach the mind, to learn how to control our minds, is because when we do a yoga practice, like a physical practice, you have to start concentrating. You have to start learning how to focus your mind. Sorry, I'm closing my eyes because that helps me concentrate. We have to start, listening to the teacher, understanding how to move the body. Like you're going to move your arm to this position and you have to hear that instruction. You have to process it and then you have to take action. And so that's like one beginner level way that we start to learn how to control our mind. So if the teacher is giving the instruction that they want you to move your arm to this position, but you're thinking about an argument you had with your partner this morning, you're not going to hear the teacher's instruction. You're not going to, if you don't hear the instruction, then you can't process it and you can't take action. And so you're going to be doing something wrong in the yoga practice. It's going to be obvious that maybe you've lifted the wrong arm, or maybe you're just standing there, or maybe you lifted the arm this way when the teacher was asking you to lift it this way. And so that, that learning to be present, pay attention, hear the instruction, process it, and take action. That's the first step that we take in yoga to on this path of learning to calm and quiet and control our minds. All right, I'm curious to know how that sits with you, but you know what? It still seems like my chat is not working, so I have no idea, but let's just keep going. If you have questions, you can try typing them in. Hopefully they'll come out. I'm not sure. Let me see if there's anything I need to do here. Does that work? Oh, okay. Seems to be working over here for some reason. Okay, there's a couple of people there who have said something. Sorry, I didn't see it until now. All right, good. Amy's here and Me Forward is here too. Okay, awesome. Everything seems to be working now. Okay, let me take a quick pause and practice some kindness with my own self and drink some water. Okay. So when we talk about philosophy, which is what we're talking about today, how do I explain this? Like, it's very common, I think, for us to not understand everything. So if you have questions about what I'm talking about, or if you're like, I'm not understanding, I'm confused, this is going over my head, that's perfectly normal. Your degree of understanding will have very much to do with your personal practice, how long you've been practicing yoga, how much you understand about your body and your mind. So some of the things that I might talk about today may be something that you don't understand yet because you haven't been practicing very long, and that's perfectly okay. You can still hang out and listen, and take in any information that does make sense, and ask questions if anything is confusing. Okay, because I'm about to launch into something that's like a little bit more subtle and a little more challenging to understand. So once we are able to hear the instructions and process them, and take action and follow along with the physical practice, like that's kind of the first level, I would say. Then we can start paying attention to our breathing. And so then we start coordinating our inhales and our exhales with our movement. We start learning how to smooth our breath and our movement. We start learning what is our comfortable, appropriate pace of breathing. So this is like a whole next level of things that you start figuring out in your physical yoga practice. And also, it's more subtle, so it's a more challenging, more advanced level of learning to focus your mind. Yeah, so hopefully that's making sense. Yoga is definitely experiential. So once you start practicing, you'll start to understand more and more of what I'm talking about here. So that's the next way that we start to learn how to focus the mind, how to calm the mind. We're on this path of what is the purpose of yoga? The purpose of yoga is to calm and quiet your mind. Okay, so you know how to do yoga poses. Then you start to know how to coordinate your breathing with the postures. Then you can start to pay attention to what, or I don't know, these things don't necessarily need to go exactly in order. Maybe before you started working on breathing, you started to have some better awareness of your own body. So maybe you notice that when you're doing triangle pose, when you side bend to the left side, there's a lot of stretching happening in your right. And maybe you notice that when you side bend to your right side, there's actually less stretching happening in your left. And so in this way, we can start to notice and become familiar and become experts in our bodies and our body awareness and what our body is feeling. So all of these are ways that, we're refining and making more subtle our ability to concentrate and focus and have a calm mind. All right, cool. So I'm going to pause here for just a second and check out the chat. Yeah, I'm sorry we had a bumpy start today. I had an internet problem. My signal just dropped for a little bit, and that's why that first live stream that I tried to start ended up not working. But I'm glad that y'all are here. Um, Jazzy Sky is here now from Canyon, Texas. I don't know where that is. I'm going to have to look it up. And Lisa's here. Hi, Lisa. Okay, finally you're here. Good. Yeah, welcome. Sorry about the trouble. Okay, so I'm talking today about, the purpose of yoga is to quiet the mind. I think I probably even have that on a shirt. Yeah, y'all are welcome to order shirts if you want to. I'm sure that I have that on at least one shirt. The purpose of yoga is to quiet the mind. You can find them in our Teespring store, which is usually right under our videos. Okay, good. Okay, this is Lava's here. Perfect. Very good. Okay, let's see where we go next. So we've talked about the physical postures. We've talked about breathing. We've talked about body awareness. Okay, so once we get pretty rooted in our practice, our physical practice, then, and yeah, sorry, I hope that all of this is making sense. I recognize that many people who start practicing yoga on my channel are beginners to yoga. So I just want to be sensitive that I'm not going too deep and like going beyond what makes sense for you for right now. But I'm going to keep going. So once we get pretty firmly rooted in our asana practice and we're familiar with postures and we can follow along pretty well and we have good body awareness and we have figured out how to coordinate breathing, then next step we can start to work on, you remember the 8 limbs, we can start to work on the 4th limb, pranayama practice, which is seated breathing practice. So yes, we do breathe in the asana practice all the time. Inhale and do this, exhale and do that. And that's one level of breathing. But next level of breathing, more advanced level, is sitting and just sitting, not moving your body, just sitting and focusing on breathing practices. And we do all different kinds of breathing practices. In fact, breathing is another thing. Just like I told you, philosophy is best learned with the help of a teacher. Same for breathing, best learned with the help of a teacher, because breathing practices are very powerful and you want to make sure that you're doing the right practice for you. So, for example, if you're a person who tends to be lethargic, if you have a tendency to be depressed, if you, I can't think of a third example, but, people who have kind of like lower energy, like tired or depressed, you need one type of breathing practice. Whereas people who tend to be very stressed or very hyper, uh, people who are like super driven and active and just like doing, these people need a different kind of breathing practice than the people I was just talking about. So there are certain breathing practices that are safe and kind of neutral and acceptable and beneficial for everybody. But we do have to be careful and not just, don't just take any breathing practice and assume that it's fine for you and start doing it, because it could possibly have some harmful effects for you. So, what I teach on my channel, I explain clearly like this breathing practice is fine for everybody, or I'll say, if you have this situation, then you can do this breathing practice. If you have this other situation, you do this different kind of breathing practice. But generally, like if you go to another channel or you go to a class and a teacher's teaching something you haven't seen before, you should ask them, is this breathing practice appropriate for me? So that's a little bit of a tangent, but looping back to the idea of quieting the mind. Okay, so we're going on a scale kind of gross to subtle, like something that's very big and obvious to something that's kind of quieter and smaller and a little bit more difficult to understand. But if we're thinking about, this idea of quieting the mind, first we learn to focus on moving the body and doing this. Like we can see it, we can understand it, we know how, like it's an easier way to begin training your mind. Then once we're experts, or at least rooted well in that, then we can start to work on the more subtle thing, which is just sitting, not moving, paying attention to the breathing. For many people, just sitting and being still is difficult because the mind is, really active and busy and inquisitive and wanting to know things. And so sitting still can be very difficult. You feel kind of agitated. You feel like you want to go faster or, something like that. So, just being able to sit by itself is an accomplishment. When we work on pranayama practices, we're just sitting there and breathing. It's very easy for the mind to wander off and start thinking about different things. And so, this is one of the reasons that we have many different breathing practices. And, your teacher or I could, if you're interested in this kind of thing, um, tell you, like, have to get some information from you. And then I can tell you, okay, you work on this kind of breathing, and I'll have my reasons why. Like, if you're a person, for example, who has a very busy mind, then I need to give you a breathing practice that gives your mind something to sink its teeth into. That's kind of a weird analogy, but anyway, it gives you something for your mind, like some appropriate activities for your mind to be doing, so that as your mind is working on these things, it's actually busy but also focused on a specific task. Hopefully this is making sense. And in this way, as we learn to sit and be still, as we learn to breathe and keep our full concentration on the breathing, we're further refining and improving our ability to focus, improving our mind's ability. Because when the mind is focused, then it learns to be calm. It learns to be quiet, we can say. Hopefully this is all making sense. It's difficult stuff for me to explain because, as I was mentioning earlier, these are things that we learn through experience. It's things that I've learned through my 20 whatever years of practicing yoga. And it's not easy for a person who has not practiced yoga before, or a person who is not at this stage of their practice, to understand. Even still, I want to explain it to you so that you can start to have some reasoning for why yoga is more than just a physical exercise. Okay, I'm going to pause here for just a second because I saw a comment come in. Is breathing practice the same as meditation? I use it as meditation. Focusing the mind only on breathing. Is this right? It has been helping me tremendously. Yes, this is a very good question, and it's a correct observation. Breathing practice. Okay, so I'm going to rewind here just a minute. We talked about the 8 limbs of yoga, and we have the breathing practice pranayama right here as the 4th limb. And then we have 3 more. And these, oh, sorry, not 3, we have 4 more. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. Oh, pratyahara. I forgot to tell you pratyahara. Pratyahara is learning to be in control of your senses. And then the last 3 are dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And so these 3 technically, like classically, are what are defined as meditation. But I really love your question. I'm going to take a minute to explain and answer here. I'm with you. For me, right, like my best meditation practice is a breathing practice. I can sit and concentrate on my breathing for X number of breaths or X number of minutes. And that is, my best way to work on focusing my mind. Let me go into a little bit of detail about these 3 limbs, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And then this whole answer will start to make more sense for you. So, dharana is learning to focus for 1 second, for a moment in time. Like, for example, I'm recognizing, here are my glasses. I see these are my glasses. Okay, I focused for 1 second to recognize that these are glasses. Then, when I'm able to concentrate and stay with my glasses, like keep my concentration with my glasses for a longer period of time, like a minute, then this is the next level of learning to meditate. This is dhyana. So I'm looking at the glasses, I'm looking at the glasses. I'm not necessarily looking at the details, like the colors are like brown and beige, and it says something here on the inside, they were made in China. I'm not paying attention, like cognitively, to the details of the glasses. I'm just here with the glasses, focused on this, not paying attention to anything else. Like, I noticed, for example, that beyond the glasses, I can see myself on the screen, but that's not what I'm paying attention to. I'm right here with the glasses. And so when we learn to concentrate for a little bit longer duration of time without getting distracted by other things, that's that second level of meditation, which is called dhyana. And then the last level of meditation, which is true meditation, this is samadhi. Samadhi is when we're able to maintain focus on our object of meditation, whatever it is. This is like a silly object of meditation, but I'm just using it as an example. But we're able to maintain our concentration on this thing for a long time. And we're so concentrated on it that we don't notice anything else that's happening in the world. We don't notice if someone has walked into the room, or if the AC has turned on or the heater has turned on. So that's what, that kind of final level of meditation is, where you're so fully engrossed with the object that you're focusing on that you don't notice any other, extra things that are happening around you. Like that's your whole world for that time when you're meditating. That said, breathing can be an absolutely great meditation practice, because that final stage that I was mentioning, samadhi, we may never get to that stage in this lifetime. We may never get to that stage of being able to concentrate so completely and so deeply for a long um, duration of time. We may not get there. It's very hard to do. It's not something that any person who you meet can just sit down and successfully meditate. No, we have to do the preparation work. And in fact, I have seen or heard my teachers talk about how you cannot actually have the intention to sit down and meditate. You sit down and you can begin breathing, you can begin trying to concentrate. Whether or not meditation happens is a little bit beyond our actual control. Like we can have the intention of trying to do good long, I think, answer to your question. But the short version is yes, breathing practice can absolutely be your current stage of meditation and can definitely be very beneficial, not only physiologically in terms of, helping your lungs to expand and contract, getting energy into your body, but also the mental aspect of I'm sitting here right now concentrating on my breathing and I'm not noticing that my dog is licking my knee, or whatever outside distraction is happening. So breathing practice by itself can be an excellent meditation practice. Very good. Oh, Margaret's here now. Yeah, sorry, I had a technical issue, and for any of y'all who have just joined me in the last couple of minutes, I started the live stream on time and then my internet dropped. And so I had to quit that initial live stream and make a new one. And so it was a little bit chaotic there in the beginning, but here we are. We're here now. So I'm talking about what is the purpose of yoga. And in the beginning of this video, I talked about how many people think that yoga is about the physical practice and becoming primarily more flexible and then secondarily stronger. But really, that's just a tiny piece of what yoga is. There's a lot to yoga beyond the physical yoga practice. And that's what I'm talking about today, and about how the purpose of yoga is actually to learn to focus and concentrate your mind. Okay, good. Let me know if you have any questions about this stuff. Another thing that I was talking about quite a bit earlier, and so if you've just joined, I want to make sure to mention that yoga is experiential and we learn by doing. And so some of these things that I'm trying to explain, number one, are difficult for me to explain because you have to have experienced it to understand. So if anything is not quite making sense, it's okay. It's okay if it's not making sense, but you can still hear it and understand it cognitively. And then as you continue to progress in your practice, one day you will understand it. I don't know, intrinsically. I don't know what the right word is there. All right, I'm going to take another quick break here and give myself some water. All right. Some of y'all will know that I have been traveling, and we were in the desert for the past 6 weeks. And then this week we are in Oklahoma, and it's really humid. It's been raining. There was threat of big hail and tornadoes like Monday night, I think. So anyway, the weather and the climate is super different here. And so the allergens are different here. And we all have been having different allergy related symptoms. Anyway, it helps me to drink water. Okay, where shall we go next? that may actually be enough depth for today. So if you have any questions about any of this, let me know. And otherwise, I will think of the next direction to take the conversation here. Okay. You know what's another great meditation practice is chanting. I wonder, I really like chanting. I was talking with someone about this 1 or 2 days ago. Um, Chanting is an interesting topic, and I find that many people in this country, in the US anyway, or in the West, are like uncomfortable with chanting, not interested in chanting, don't know what chanting is about. So let me just take a minute to give a little bit of information about chanting, because this also can be a great practice for helping you to focus and calm and quiet your mind. So what I really like about chanting, and this, so let me rewind here a little bit and give you some context and explanation. So in this Yoga Sutras book, okay, I need to explain this because probably this is not intuitive to everybody. So we have this book, the Yoga Sutras, which tells you like one thread of information, one sutra of information. Like I was telling you, where does this book actually start? The first sutra, chapter 1, verse 2, the second sutra, tells us that the purpose of yoga is to quiet your mind. And then there's, a 1.3 and there's a 1.4. And so, there's a lot of information that we learn in this book. And after each sutra, like I was telling you, like here's one example. They tell you what it is in Sanskrit, and then they tell you what it is using letters, alphabet letters. And then there's a long explanation about what it means. So that's what this version of the book is like. But also, the Yoga Sutras can be studied through chanting. And this one, like I showed you earlier, is just the sutras by themselves. Here's the Sanskrit, and here's the alphabet letters. And so when we learn to chant the Yoga Sutras, this is one way that we learn the book. We just chant. Here's the first sutra, Ata Yoga Nushasanam Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodha Tada Drashtuhu Svarupe Avasthanam. Okay, so I just chanted for you 3 sutras. And the way, so this will help answer your question, Lisa, if it's similar to humming. It's actually like chanting, some actual words. And when we're chanting, as you might imagine, like it took me a long time to learn that, what I just chanted for you. We have to learn, let me see if I can show you, what the accent marks mean. Like this mark under the A has a meaning. This mark over the A has a different meaning. This line on top of that U has a different meaning. Sometimes we have like dots in different places. Like here's a couple of dots under the letters. These all have different meanings. And so in order to learn how to chant, we have to concentrate. We have to learn, what does the line under the A mean? What kind of sound do I make when I see that? What kind of sound do I make when I see the line going up over the U? So we have to learn those accent marks. We have to learn the pronunciation of the letters because they're different. Like, for example, here we have Chitta, Citta, that looks like Sita in English, but in Sanskrit, the C is pronounced as Ch. So we have to learn that. We have to learn the tones, like is it a middle note or an upper note or a lower note or like a double lower note? Those are the 4 notes in chanting. And so as you're concentrating and learning and paying attention, you get really absorbed in this work that you're doing, understanding it and then chanting it in the right way. Typically, the way chanting is taught is in a call and response format. So the teacher will say it, that's called call, and then the student has to respond and chant the same thing back. And that way, through practice and repetition, you start to learn, how to do it correctly. And we do it over and over and over. So you can imagine that in that way, chanting can also be a great meditative practice. It gives you something to focus on, something that you have to concentrate on so completely, because if you're not paying attention, you're certainly going to make mistakes and your chanting is going to be incorrect, or it's going to not match with the other students in the class. So this is also a great way, to learn how to quiet your mind. Okay. Um, okay, good. So Margaret's asking, I've looked for a copy of the transliteration guide you used, but didn't find one. Do you have a reference for that? Do you mean this one, Margaret, the green book, or do you mean the other book? This book I got at my yoga school in India. And so if anyone is interested, next time I go, I can pick up some extra copies and then I can send it to you. This book I found on Amazon. You can get this one on Amazon, and the author is Edwin F. Bryant. Yeah, and I have a link for that somewhere. I can share it with you. Transliteration guide. Yeah. And the other book that I used first is from Sachidananda, and I can also share the link for that one. You can also find that one on Amazon. Yeah. Yeah. So chanting is a favorite practice of mine. I love to do, my breathing practice, which is meditative for me, and I love to do chanting practice. And I haven't done a lot of chanting practice lately, but I really do enjoy it. It's also very good for breathing, obviously, because you have to inhale and then chant out some words. And so that's exercising your capacity for your breath. Yeah, so I need to get back into more of my chanting. It's a very good practice. Yeah, and so you can learn chanting of the Yoga Sutras. There's lots and lots and lots of chants to learn. Yeah, okay, let's see. Margaret says, I have the notes you gave, but I don't know what source you are using. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah. So usually in the beginning of most any Sanskrit book or chanting book, you'll find a pronunciation guide. Like here's this one in the beginning of this book, and it explains the details of, what this A with a line on top is meant to sound like, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can get that for you, Margaret. I can email that over to you. Yeah. It has a few pages of the pronunciation guide. I think this is what you're asking me. Yeah, I'd be happy to send that to you. Excuse me. Me Forward says, I didn't know what it was at the time, but when I delivered my youngest baby, I found it helpful to exhale and hum. Yes, that's great. Yeah, humming is a way that we can begin working on chanting for people who are open to it, because some people are not interested in chanting, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to practice all of yoga. For some people, the thing that makes them uncomfortable is actually making sound. And so if you're interested in chanting, but it makes you nervous, one great way to begin is just working on the humming. And I do that, you probably have seen that in my videos and in, different places where I teach, that I often do like inhale normally and then exhale hum. And I'll just breathe for a second and demonstrate that one for you. Yeah, and so humming is also a great way to start getting comfortable with making sound. Humming by itself has a lot of helpful properties. So Me Forward was talking about the humming during childbirth, and humming actually is relaxing for the body. It's like a vibration. In order to make the sound, there's a vibration happening. It is kind of like the same effect as having a massage, like in your neck and throat region. So it can be relaxing for your neck and your shoulders. Certainly during childbirth, it can be stressful, and we can benefit from, making it sound like that to create some relaxation. What else can I tell you about humming? Oh, yeah, humming and chanting. I talked about this for chanting a minute ago, but if we think specifically about humming, you may have noticed as I was breathing and humming there that my inhale was a certain length, but the hum was longer. And that's because in order to make the hum sound, you have to constrict your throat a little bit. You're making that passageway smaller and narrower. And so, since the whole volume of the inhale has to pass through that smaller space to make the hum, hopefully that makes sense. That's why the duration of the hum or the exhale is longer than the duration of the inhale. So there's lots of benefits to humming and chanting, physiologically and also mentally. So it's another great practice. So I think that's probably about it for today. This, explanation and discussion about the purpose of yoga is a little, it's definitely beyond beginner level instruction. So hopefully it has made sense and, gives you maybe some curiosity about some things to start paying attention to in your practice, and can be kind of a motivation to start pondering yoga beyond the physical postures and see what other benefits can be there for you. So if you have any like lingering questions here or comments, I'm happy to hear them. Yeah, I'm curious to know what you think about all of this stuff. um, yeah, it's tricky. I'll tell you a little more information. It's tricky for me as a yoga teacher because I value this kind of thing in the yoga practice so much, but it's not something that I can often teach people because in any yoga class, like be it in person or online, there are always new people coming in. And new people, if I tried to talk to them about this thing, like someone shows up and it's their first day of yoga class, and if I were to try to talk about this, it would be, overwhelming. It would be uncomfortable. The person wouldn't understand. They probably would never come back to yoga. And so, because of the nature of how yoga classes work, like, in our society, that new people come in all the time, I never feel that it's appropriate to share this kind of information in my classes. And I tend to only share this if, on some given day, there's only people in my class who I know have been practicing with me for a while, and I know that they can understand this, and it's not going to be scary or off-putting or, overwhelming or intimidating to them. So I don't share this information very often, certainly not on my YouTube channel, because I know that there are new people watching every day, people who are brand new to yoga. So I don't often share this kind of information. This probably is the first time I've done it. Um, but more so in my online community, which is hosted on Patreon. Like folks who are in there, I know they've been practicing for a while. I know they're ready for deeper instruction than what I offer on YouTube. And so, I'm definitely starting to share this kind of information with the people in that online community and in my classes too, because, my live classes, which I teach via Zoom, I can see who's there. I know who they are. I know how long they've been practicing with me. And, in that situation too, more frequently I'm able to share this kind of stuff. And of course, in, one-on-one sessions, I can go at that person's pace. So, definitely I do this kind of stuff there. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of context for all of this because, I think universally people think of yoga as physical exercise. And I'm just trying to convey that there's a lot beyond the physical postures. But, if I'm trying to be a responsible yoga teacher, I'm not going to share that with everybody. The person needs to be ready for it. Like they need to be at the right stage in their practice where this information is appropriate and makes sense and is beneficial for them and doesn't just add confusion. So hopefully all of this makes sense. All right, I think that's all for today. Thank you all so much for joining me, and thank you for your patience with my technical issue that I had, starting the one live stream and then having to switch over to another one. I appreciate it. Thank you everyone for being here. So I owe you some information, links to these books, and I owe you, Margaret, I'm going to email you some pronunciation details. And one last detail that I want to mention, excuse me, I talked about my online community, which is on Patreon. I talked about my live classes and I talked about private instruction. So if you're interested in more information about any of those, I'll put a link also in the description box so that you can, start deepening your practice and start moving beyond the content that I have on my public YouTube channel. All right. I think that's all. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next week when I'm in my new location. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.